MirageGaogamon gets insane support. Even though there's not a new MirageGaogamon, this deck really has become much more consistent and fast and powerful. Let's get into it. In my opinion, the best Digiact to still run here is that Wanyumon from BT11. When you attack, if you have a blue tamer in play, you go ahead and you draw a card. Perfect to just continue getting cards from your deck. Now we have to showcase the new Gaomon. So 4 of these Ex4 ones has a really cool on-play effect. It's kind of a first of its kind, I believe. This on-play does come up and helps extend your plays. I know it sounds a little off, but we'll get there in the combo section of the video. The inherit your turn once per turn. When an effect adds cards to your opponent's hand, gain 1 memory. Next, 4 copies of the BT11 Gaomon. The other one is Digiburst one. It's not really that good. It's just, if you use it, it'll just be because of its name. This Gaomon is fantastic because when you play it, you reveal 3 cards from your deck. Add 1 Digimon card with Gaogamon in its name, and 1 blue tamer from them among them to your hand, and then you trash the rest. Keyword, you trash the rest and put them back down at the bottom. I used to do that a lot. So, also, kind of sucks. You can't really pick himself. You can't pick up another Gaomon from his effect. So, important thing to note. The inherit 1 attacking once per turn. If you have a tamer in play, return 1 of your opponent's level 3 Digimon to its owner's hand, which is going to come up, especially for those floodgate cards, right? If there's memory blockers or anything like that, you have that as an inherit. Boom, you send it back to the hand, and that triggers a lot of your effects. For the last level 4s, we're doing 4 Labramon. This card is so good, just with jamming decks. Obviously, I've used it in Pyodramon. It's really nuts. When attacking once per turn, if this Digimon has jamming, gain 1 memory. The tamer, if you don't know by now, Nikolai gives you jamming if you have Gaomon or Gaogamon in your name. So this comes up, so when you swing, now you're just going to gain 1 memory. For the champions, 4 Gaogamon from the new EX4, of course. 1 Digivolving, return 1 of your opponent's level 3 Digimon to its owner's hand. That's pretty cool, because now if you do have the EX4 Gaomon, and let's say you Digivolve them top for 2, so when Digivolving triggers, if you return something, now the Gaomon's inherit will give you 1 memory, helping you technically Digivolve for 1. Of course, if there's a target for you to return when you Digivolve. Really cool. And then the inherit is the same as the Gaomon from EX4. If you return, when an effect adds cards to your opponent's hand, you gain 1 memory. So you could potentially get up to 2 memory when you add a card to your opponent's hand. BT11 Gaogamon, 4 of, when attacking once per turn. If your opponent has 8 or more cards in their hand, you gain 1 memory. What's cool is if you have Labramon and you give them jamming, and then you swing, you gain a memory from jamming. And then if they have 8 cards or more, get another memory. So you could get up to 2 memory by just attacking with the Gaogamon, making it a free cost. Pretty cool. The inherit, same thing. When attacking once per turn, if you have a tamer in play, return 1 of your opponent's level 3 or lower to its owner's hand. Same thing as the Gaomon from BT11. And then to wrap up the champions, we're doing 2 hybrids because it is kind of a heavy tamer deck. And then just going for hybrid for game. Nothing wrong with that. I love using the Kumamon, just being able to strip. I was playing a matchup where I was going against Examon, and I hybrided, is that a word? I hybrided into Kumamon, and then I trashed Cordramon, and now that Breaker Dramon didn't have blocker, so it's pretty cool. So now they couldn't, block, obviously. Level 5s, you already know, EX4, MirageGaogamon. This card is awesome. When Digivolving, you get to return a level 4 now instead of a level 3 from the Gaogamon. You get to return level 4 back to your owner's hand. So now if you do Digivolve and you have that one in the bottom, if you Digivolve from that one and you Digivolve having Gaomon in the bottom, you ended up doing that and you return something, you gain 2 memory, you basically Digivolve for 1. So it's a good way to choke or extend your play and maintaining your turn. Even if you're at 2, you Digivolve for 3, gain 2 memory, and then you would just Digivolve for 1. It's pretty cool. The inherit, 1 attacking once per turn. If your opponent has 8 or more cards in their hand, unsuspend this Digimon. So now you can go ahead and swing twice. Of course, if they have 8 cards in their hand. Last, in case you haven't noticed, it is kind of a tribal deck. So we're playing the BT11 MirageGaogamon. When Digivolving until the end of your opponent's turn, this Digimon gains blocker, and it gets 2000 DP for every 4 cards in your opponent's hand. That's pretty good because if you want to run over cards that are 12k, 13k, even 14, if you digivolve into the MirageGaogamon, this effect still stays with them, so it still becomes a blocker, and it gets that DP increase, allowing you to swing over big bodies. And then the inherit is all turns once per turn. When an effect adds cards to your opponent's hand, unsuspend this Digimon. So pretty cool. If you have a separate, let's say you have a separate stack and you digivolve into the champion Gaogamon and you have a Mirage already, it would unsuspend it, just to give you an idea. Onto the megas, level 6s, 4 of the BT11 MirageGaogamon. This is the best MirageGaogamon we have as of now, right? As of EX4. When digivolving, return one of your opponent's level 5 or lower Digimon to its owner's hand. If no Digimon was returned by this effect, your opponent adds a top card of a security stack to their hand. All turns once per turn. When an effect adds cards to your opponent's hand, gain 1 memory for every 4 cards in your opponent's hand. So if you've noticed, you kind of want your opponent to be stuck with 8 cards in their hands or more. That's when your effects will trigger, such as unsuspending, gaining memory, things like that. 4 of those. Then we're doing one of the old BT4 MirageGaogamon. When digivolving, gain 1 memory for every 4 cards in your opponent's hand. So even if they just have 4, it would cost 3 because it's a 4 cost. What I love about this card is your turn, this Digimon is unblockable. So if they do have blockers, you do not have to worry about that. And then giving him jamming, now you got an unblockable jamming MirageGaogamon. That's nuts. To top it off, I would run 2, but I'm trying out this new Garurumon, and he's pretty cool. When digivolving, return one of your opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon to the hand. Then, if they have 8 or more cards in their hand, return one of their level 6 or higher Digimon to their hand. So this card essentially could help you bounce back 2 bodies. That's nuts. You bounce bodies, and then all the inherits from the Gaogamons, you gain memory, or unsuspend if you have the mock Gaogamons. All turns, once per turn, when an effect adds cards to your opponent's hand. If you have a tamer, return one of your opponent's level 3 Digimon to the hand. This one, digivolving, will also hit the all turns once per turn, right? You digivolve, you return a level 4 or lower back to their hand. Now they have 8 cards, and now you get to return a level 6 or higher back to their hand. And now all turns once per turn, you get to bounce now another level 3, potentially bouncing 3 bodies just from digivolving. That's nuts. Pretty nuts. I would use 2, but I'll talk about why I'm only doing 1 of the Garurumon when we get to the tamers. For the level 7s, of course, we're going to go ahead and just Omni for game, BT5. This one, when digivolving, you get Blitz. When digivolving, unsuspend this Digimon. And then, of course, all turns, if an opponent's effect would delete this Digimon, return it to its owner's hand or deck. You may prevent it from leaving play by trashing a level 6 Digimon. Don't really use it for that, you kind of use it for the finishing blow. But it's still good to have that kind of a protection for itself. Good for the level 7s. Move on to the tamers here. Of course, I already mentioned them in the beginning. Nikolai, 4 of, start of your main phase, one of your Digimon with Gaomon or Gaogamon in its name gains jamming for the turn. So that's where you're going to benefit from the Labramon inherit, because you'll have jamming and you gain 1 memory. Your turn, when an effect adds cards to your opponent's hand by suspending this tamer, gain 1 memory. As you can see, everything kind of bounces back stuff to your opponent's hand. And now if you bounce something, you have, obviously they stack, so you're able to tap 1, 2, or 4 if you have all 4 on the board. We'll get into some really cool combos. And then last but not least, 3 Thomases. Thomas, on play, trigger, draw 1. So that's already a plus side, right? If you brick and you got a Thomas, if you drop it, now you got a tamer and at least you draw. So it's kind of like you digivolve, of course, without having a Digimon. Main, if your opponent has 8 or more cards in their hand, you may suspend this tamer to unsuspend one of your Digimon with Gao in its name. So this is how you're gonna attack so many times. We got to a point where I swing 4 times in 1 turn with the help of this guy. Beautiful. Beautiful, I tell you. That's all 4 of the tamers. We are doing a total of 7. Moving on to the options, 3 Cocytus Breath. This card in this deck is just so dumb. Really dumb. I've played this card for essentially 2 memory. So dumb. Main effect, return one of your opponent's Digimon to its owner's hand. That's it. It's cool because it's not restricted, a level 5 or lower, level 6 or lower, whatever. The security effect, you activate the card. Plain and simple, good form of removal, especially if there's level 7s or you can't build up to your MirageGaogamon so quick that you could just drop that and bam. 1 Ice Wall, because it's Ice Wall. Only 1 because obviously it's restricted to 1. Main effect, all of your opponent's Digimons gain, when attacking, lose 2 memory. Security effect, gain 2 memory. Kind of cool where you kind of need that one more turn to finish building up in the raising area, and they kind of have enough bodies to go for game. And if you leave them at 1, you know, you play the Ice Wall, and now if they swing once, they lose 2 memory, it would pass turn. So really, really nice, kind of a defensive option card. And then last is 1 blue memory boost. I'll talk about other cards that you could use. We'll talk about the blue memory boost. Obviously, it's just more searching and then gaining memory when you hit that delay. Other option cards that you can use, I don't have the other one here, but I do have the Full Metal Blaze. That's a really good card to have. I did have 1 instead of the blue memory boost, but I feel like this deck does such a good job with bouncing things back already. And, you know, having unblockable, having jamming. Can you run this? Sure, you can, because you still bounce Digimon back to your opponent's hand and to the bottom of the deck. So it's a good board to, it's a good card to clear board. Now, before we move on to some nasty combos with this deck, if you haven't hit that sub button, go ahead and take the time right now, hit the subscribe button, like the video, comment down below what deck profile you want to see next, so I can start working on those. They're all going to come out anyways, but maybe I'll work on another one quicker than another one. It's free, so hit that sub button and let's get into it. One thing I will note, you could play more blue memory boosts, since, you know, the tamers that we do play aren't memory set tamers, so you can get choked. So you could up the blue memory boost if you'd like. I think 1 is good enough for now. I'm just gonna set something quick up here. So let's say your opponent left you at 1. Left you at 1, you got these tamers here. You go ahead and move up. Now you're gonna Digivolve to Gaogamon for 2. You go to 1, and now when Digivolving, return a level 3 back to their hand. Boom, it gets returned. Now, if you don't have the Gaogamon, right? So if you had that inherit, you would get that 1 memory, right? But in this case, if you don't, now you trigger Nikolai, and then you gain a memory, so you go to 0. If you have these 2, you're gaining 2 memory, you go back to 1, Digivolving for free. So that is what I was talking about as far as kind of Digivolving for free almost, or for 1. If you already have this stack here, I'm gonna get rid of this. Let's say you already had that stack there. All right, you moved up the Gaogamon, he has jamming. So start of your main phase, that's after your breeding area. I will say this, if you do have the Labramon, and let's say you're about to Digivolve into the Gaogamon, so if I move up, there's your start of the main phase, you can't give it jamming. So that's the downfall of that, because it has to have Gaomon in its name, or Gaogamon, right? So let's say I do that Digivolve, you miss the timing to get jamming. So in this case, let's say you already had it down here, start of your turn, you go up, right? You go ahead and you swing, you get to draw for having a tamer, and then you gain a memory for having jamming. Now you're at 2. And you don't have to worry about hitting something in the security unless it's an option card and or a blocker if they choose to block. I did talk about using this Gaogamon, right? So if you had that one instead, you were at 1, you swing. Your opponent has 8 or more cards. 1, you gain it from jamming. So you go to 2, you swing. If they have 8 cards or more, you gain 1 memory. So now you're at 3. And now that's cool, because now let's say you want to go ahead and Digivolve into this one for 3, go to 0. He is suspended still, however now you gain the blocker, but you gain that DP. So if you don't want it to get deleted and your opponent has 8 cards in their hand, that's 4,000 DP added to the Gaogamon, making him a 11,000 DP hitter. So it's kind of a pseudo Metal Greymon, you know, where it gives you kind of the protection, although you really don't have much protection besides just giving yourself more DP. But if you do that, and now you end up doing this, Digivolving for 4, right? You return something. If they don't have anything, they get their security, one of their security back to their hand. And now, in effect, added something to your opponent's hand. You will unsuspend from Gaogamon's effect. And then, of course, if you have that one and or this one underneath, you gain 2 memory for Digivolving. So just follow along here for a bit. And now the alterns once per turn, when a card is returned back to your opponent's hand, you gain 2 memory. So now if they have 8, just like that, you're back at 0 if you had these 2. Just those 2. And now we're going to go ahead and swing. Gain jamming. Oh, that's he still has jamming from that since it has a Gaoman in its name. Now you're gonna go ahead and tap. Oh, I'm sorry. And then another memory would be here, right? Now you go to you'd go to 1. So now, like I was saying, you would tap this. He unsuspends, and now you swing again. And that's what was that? 2 checks with the Gaogamon, 2 from him, and then of course you go ahead. Digivolve to Omni for 4, going to 3, he unsuspends, you do have Blitz, and now you swing again, going for game. Alright, this is your opponent security. This is what we have. We're going to go ahead and go into the breeding area, right? You have jamming there. Now what you can do, of course, is you'll go ahead and you swing, right? Kind of similar to the other scenario. You get jamming, now boom, you check 1 security. Don't worry about what it is. So, just a visual for you guys. Now, we'll go ahead and tap Thornton to unsuspend if your opponent does have 8 or more cards in their hand. Then of course, if you just have another one, you would swing, tap, unsuspend, and now that's your second hit, right? Assuming you have the 2. And a Digivolve for 3. 3, draw, let's say you bounce back a level 4, you're gaining 1 memory, 2 memories, 2 memory, 2, tap, Nikolai, go to 3, and now we go into Mirage for 4, go to 1, uses effect. Even though you already use this, you put something in your opponent's hand, and if they just have 4, now you gain 1 memory. Get to swing again. MirageGaogamon, if your opponent has 8 or more cards in their hand, in this case let's say they do, so that'd be another memory for me. If they have 8 or more cards in their hand, unsuspend this Digimon, so now that swing goes through and I hit, boom, it's 12. Now we'll go ahead and swing again. Boom. Jamming, doesn't matter. And then there you go. That was 5 hits in total. So when you have your MirageGaogamon already, right? Let's say even if they leave you at 2, if you just drop a Gaomon, if you have no way of returning cards into your opponent's hand, well, Gaomon allows you to do that, and that's why I was telling you, he will extend your plays. Even if you end up, you go to 2, now MirageGaogamon's all turns once per turn triggers, and if there's 8 cards in your opponent's hand, especially with the help of your boy Gaomon here, you're gonna go back to 2, triggering now the other 2 down here, going to 4, gaining 4 memory. Essentially, you're gaining a free memory by playing this for 3. So that's one thing. Let's talk about Kakaida's Breath. You play Kakaida's Breath, you return something to your opponent's hand, right? So even if you're at 1, let's say you're at 6 now, right? Or you leave your opponent at 6 by playing Kakaida's Breath. Now, you return something to your opponent's hand. Let's say they got 12 cards in hand. That's, if I'm not mistaken, that's 3 memory, right? For every 4. So 1, 2, 3. Gain another 2 memory here. 1, 2. Nikolai, boom. 6. Still continuing your turn. And you played this for a memory cost of 1. Now, if you have another one, you will be able to just play it. Of course, then it would cost 7, but it's so dumb. Now you can attack. They have more than 8 cards in hand. You unsuspend, you swing again, you tap Thomas, you unsuspend and swing again. Now you go ahead and swing Omni for game. If there was a level 6 or 7 that was stopping you from doing that swinging combo.